everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today is very exciting. We're going to be cooking for the first time on the channel since I think 3 years ago. And we're just going to be making a really simple recipe for beef soup. It's one of my favorite things to make because it's packed with flavor, it's packed with nutrition, and it's super simple, super easy to make. And it takes a little bit over an hour and 5 minutes. Most of it is just the setup, and then you kind of set it and forget it. Really easy recipe, packed with deliciousness, flavor, and nutrition. So without further ado, let's jump to the ingredients and get started. Okay, and here we have all of our ingredients listed. We have our onion, we have our carrots, we have our potatoes, a bunch of celery, as celery is just adds so much flavor to your soup. I highly, if you don't already do this, which you should, if you're making soup, adding celery to it will make the flavor really pop. And we have a bunch of garlic that has not been crushed yet, and of course, optional, but I like to add green peppers and red peppers to my soup. And we have a bunch of beef steak tips. Ideally for this recipe, you would want to add some beef stew meat instead, but the supermarket was all out, so I made do with this, and I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. Also, we have some beef stock here. Some good old beef stock. You don't need it necessarily. You can just make do with the beef's juices, its natural juices, and water. But if you want to cheat a little bit, beef stock works really well. We have some thyme. We are going to be using some garlic powder. We are going to be using some salt, of course. This is kosher coarse salt, by the way. Paprika, black pepper, and basil leaves. And last but not least, some tomato paste. Of course, if you want to use fresh tomatoes, that is perfectly acceptable as well. So now we're just going to get started on chopping everything and getting everything ready. I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit awkward for me as I'm not used to chopping with a camera right next to my arm. So please forgive me, but I've got my kitchen knife here, and we're just going to chop this onion in half. Usually, usually you would have a bigger onion. This is kind of a smaller onion if you're chopping it in half, but the process is the same. So what you want to do is just kind of cut like so, and then chop this way. And then just make sure that you finally dice the rest of it. You can dice them smaller if you'd like, but for this purpose, I'm going to keep it very simple. Again, I usually have a lot more space to work with, but since the camera is right here, it does make it a little bit more difficult for me to chop. So and there we go. Got some nice, not really diced, but they're more roughly chopped. Usually I would dice these, but for our purposes, this is perfectly fine. Here we have our chopped onions. Next, we want to chop the garlic so we can add it with the onions to give it some nice extra flavor. So I'm gonna chop off the roots here. And then I'm just gonna smash the garlic. And here we have some smashed garlic, and then we're just gonna dice it. You can dice it if you'd like. You can chop it, dice it a little bit more. Just to get it a little bit more bite-sized, but it's not really necessary, as it's really going to cook down in the soup anyway. So there's our garlic, nicely chopped. Just going to discard these roots here because we do not need them any longer. And we also have our celery. And for the celery, I just roughly chop it. As you can see, get a nice chunk of celery, and I really like to get as much of it as I can, as close to the root as I can possibly get. Now we are going to chop the peppers. I've moved the celery over to a bowl to give me a little bit of room, and we're just gonna chop the peppers in half like so, and discard these pieces. I don't even know if this is the right way to do it, to be honest, but that's kind of how I do it. And then we're just going to roughly chop. I usually don't mind the seeds, to be honest. I think it adds some flavor to it as well, but I am not an expert at pepper chopping by any means, so definitely don't use this video as a guide for cooking practices. This is more for your relaxation more than anything. But, you know, it works for me. I don't think that it's making or breaking my dishes per se. Roughly chopped and packed with a delicious flavor. Now, mind you, one thing I want to stress is that these are not all going to go in at the same time. The meat and the onions and the garlic will go in first. The peppers, well, we'll probably add the peppers in together. However, the potatoes will be added towards the end. And the carrots will be added towards the middle, because the carrots will cook down and get really soft. But it depends on how soft you want your potatoes and your carrots. So it definitely is up to you, but this is just how I do it. Okay. I'm just gonna chop this red onion off camera since I don't have too much space, and then we'll move on to the next stage of this dish. Okay guys, everything has been chopped. We have our carrots and our potatoes over here, so that's ready. And we are practically ready to start cooking. We just need to season the beef here, and that we're going to do with all of these ingredients. So we're going to add a little bit of salt here, liberally. We're going to add a little bit of pepper. We're going to add some garlic powder. We're going to add some paprika. And we're going to add a little bit of basil. Just a teensy-weensy bit. This is all going to go into the soup as well, but I like to mix the meats to get it nice and flavored. It smells really, really good, actually. So I'm going to get that nice and coated, and then we're going to fire up our stove and get started on cooking this delicious soup. Let's do this. Okay guys, so we're firing up the pan here, and we're going to add a little bit of olive oil. And let that olive oil heat up a little bit. I'm doing this with one hand, so it's going to be a little bit awkward, but forgive me. The camera angle is difficult to get correct, but we're going to do that, and then we're just going to add the onions first with the garlic, cook that down a bit, followed by the meat. And then we're going to add the beef stock. Then we're going to add the tomato paste, and then all of our veggies, and our seasonings. And then, basically, we can pop the carrots in. I wanted to wait until halfway, but I don't think it's necessary. And then, towards the end, add the potatoes, and then profit. And then, we're going to start to rotate it in the pan. And we're going to wait for this to cook down a little bit, to brown, and then we're going to add the meat to this. And we can also add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Salt, pepper. So we can add that to this. Just a teensy-weensy bit. I feel like I should be getting some sort of achievement for cooking with one hand while having a camera in my other. It's surprisingly so much harder than it looks. And this recipe, by the way, will feed you for, if you're just one person, it should feed you for 2 to 3 days, honestly. Get a couple of bowls out of this recipe. Of course, if you want to make more, you just increase the portions, increase the amount of ingredients you use. Maybe you add 64 ounces of beef stock, double the potatoes, double the onions, so on and so forth. You can really adapt this recipe to your needs. And it's super easy to make, not time consuming, and the majority of the work is in the beginning of the process, in the beginning of the recipe. So, okay. I can see that the onions are starting to brown a little bit, so I am going to add the meat. And then we just brown the beef. You really want the beef to get browned because then the juices start to come out and it adds a lot of flavor to the soup. And gives it that, it's what separates it from beef soup compared to chicken soup, or a vegetable soup, if you will. So, beautiful. Once the meat starts to brown, we are going to add the beef stock to the soup and all of our ingredients, and then from there the rest is basically just waiting for the soup to cook before we add the potatoes in for the final touch. And that's about it, really. Pretty simple. Of course, if it's not enough, you can always add some water to it as well. Sometimes I like to do that as the soup cooks down a little bit. It's always good to, just add some more if you so wish, if you so desire. So, more pepper action there. Of this delicious celery as well. There, cooking with one hand, NBD, and then we mix it all into the soup like so. There will be a lot of off-screen maintenance, as you might imagine, but it's very heavy, very packed with ingredients, and I'm going to probably add a little bit of water to this, as it's definitely a thick boy soup. It's definitely a thick boy soup, and we need some more water to add some more liquidy goodness to the soup. So water, add to the soup, and that's going to be enough to give us some more soupy goodness here. Of course, now we're going to season the soup with all of the seasonings that I showed you before, but one really good seasoning that I highly recommend, if I can find it here. Let's see if I can find it. Is this This is amazing to add to your soup after you're almost finished cooking, because basically what this is it's just hydrogenated or dehydrated vegetables rather, carrots, parsnip, onion, potatoes, celery, etc. So adding this to the end of your soup really does give it a nice punch too. But I'm gonna season the soup off screen. Salt, pepper, garlic, all of the seasonings I mentioned, and then I will cut back and show you the final product. See you guys in a bit. Okay guys, and we are officially finished. An hour and about 15 minutes later, you can see the color looks amazing. I added the tomato paste off screen and the potatoes off screen, and I also added the seasoning that I mentioned earlier. Right here, this seasoning. Right here I added, which is, like I said, really is not necessary for this recipe, but it does definitely add a great bit of flavor towards the end. One thing that you can do that I didn't is add some hot sauce if you want to add a little bit of chili flavor to it. I didn't add it in because it depends on my mood, and so if I put, if I grab a bowl of this, I can just add the hot sauce on its own if I wish, but you could do that as well. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna plate it and show you guys the final product. Okay guys, here is the soup finished in its entirety, as you can see here. Let's get a good look there. Looks amazing. I think that, as I mentioned before, it is the perfect meal because it has so much flavor, so many different vegetables, so much nutrition, and it's delicious and easy to make, cheap, inexpensive, and you're gonna get a bunch of meals out of this. So yeah, this is the beef soup. I'm gonna go eat this bad boy off screen, but let me know if you guys liked this video, and if you'd like me to do more cooking videos in the future, or if you'd like me to do some eating videos as well. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, so I try to avoid doing things like that on the channel, but if you guys want to see it, drop a comment down below, let me know. I'm gonna go eat this before it gets cold. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, my friends.